Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining our behavioral track today. Myself and Bhaskar are going to be going over how to present target architectures to your customers or your stakeholders within your organization. This will be building upon the work that Nabil and Parna did last week around doing a workload discovery, which kind of is the first step, and the second step would be actually going through what the target architectures and kind of showing that. This is something that we do an awful lot in our role, and it really comes down to how you're making sure you're communicating that architecture to the stakeholders you have there across the different kind of viewpoints that they're going to be interested in. One, you need to kind of think about the approach to the meeting that you're going to be having, where you're going to be presenting that target architecture. And over the next couple of weeks, we'll get a little more detail on these things. So there's really kind of four things you need to be thinking about as you're going into that meeting. First, that architecture needs to be working backwards from the outcomes, specifically the business outcomes that you're trying to achieve. Don't just jump right in and say, here's the solution. Remember, you got to kind of work backwards from what the outcome is. The architecture should be supporting that. Know your audience before you go into the meeting. While it is a target architectural presentation, there are likely to be people in there who aren't super technical sometimes, application owners, for instance, possibly budgetary owners. So make sure you have something for all of them. Be concise, be on time, meaning understand what you're presenting, the timing necessary for that presentation. You want to kind of avoid that, like rushing through those last three slides and say, oh, I just got to get these three things in and they're really important, then no one's listening. And finally, conclude with actions. There should be some very specific things you're asking your audience to do now that you've kind of designed this solution for them and how you want to kind of move forward with it. We're going to go through a scenario here of an actual meeting. I'll be playing the solution architect presenting this target architecture to the stakeholder group, and Bhaskar will be playing the stakeholder group. And in this group, he'll kind of be playing a mixture role of engineer, solution architect on the application team side, security architect, business application owner, development manager, budgetary owner. So kind of be like a mixture of people kind of in the room, and you'll see that he's going to have some questions from different perspectives on things and how I'll be handling that. Bhaskar, you ready to go?
Yep, let's go.
All right. Bhaskar, thanks so much for joining me today. Looking forward to this opportunity to walk you through the target architecture that I designed for the particular business application and business capabilities that you're looking for. Just want to kind of quickly go over the agenda that we'll be having today. First, we'll kind of go over the objectives we had from the previous meeting. We'll talk about the included cloud services in this architecture, since it'll be representing some new things for you, your organization, your team. I'll introduce you to the architecture itself, explain it, explain how it works, and explain how it connects to your particular scenario. I'll give you a little bit of a demonstration of how I went about building this for you. I think it's important to kind of show you the cost estimates so you can kind of see what it looks like in current state and future state. And then finally, we'll conclude with some next steps that we could work on together.
Sure.
Sound like a good agenda?
Definitely.
Okay. Bhaskar, so, one of the things that, we heard last week when we were doing the discovery with you is, 6 areas of importance to you from a business perspective that you're looking for, kind of the outcomes and objectives as we go forward with this. When you're looking for greater scalability, isolation, you want to gain agility in how you're releasing the software. You're looking to also increase the speed at which you're, building, developing, and releasing software. You mentioned how you're looking for a little bit of like where you could kind of innovate with your teams and how they're looking to create these solutions. And lastly, you said you want to make sure that it is cost effective. Does that sound like I captured everything accurately from our previous meetings?
Yeah, like majority of the things, like Jeff, you captured. Thanks for that. But however, I just wanted to add one point. So, previously, in recent history, we had some sort of outage just because probably our application was not resilient enough, right, to handle
Oh,
the outage and kind of things. So along with all these objective, it would be very great if we can also consider the resiliency of the application and the infrastructure along with it. That will help us
okay.
we really want to improve on the resiliency posture of our org.
I got you. Well, I'm sorry to hear about the outage that you have. And uh, yes, one of those things is as we look to design things, we're always kind of thinking about, security, and I'll just kind of say like resilience as, non-negotiable type of things. So
Mhm.
I'll kind of explain to you how that's handled in that architecture. And if that doesn't kind of meet the requirements, maybe we'll have to think about it a little bit more. So thank you for bringing that to our attention.
Sure.
Um, First, I just want to kind of introduce you to a few things that are going to be, new to the team here in terms of what's going to be included in this proposal that we're making. And there's kind of really four elements, and they touch on different things that you're looking for. First, we're going to be introducing what we call API gateway. We learned that as your company's expanding, that you want to take more of an API product centric view of your new capabilities, and having this and designing with an API spec first will kind of give you that ability to host APIs as products and make them consumable both internally and externally. Uh, Lambda kind of has that compute capability for you. I know you're very comfortable today using EC2 and running your Java applications there. I want to kind of introduce this idea of using a serverless capability to do that. Continuing on that serverless capability, DynamoDB as a NoSQL database. I know you guys do a lot with MySQL and RDS, and very comfortable with relational. I think because of the nature of this type of application and the quick response time you're looking for, I think Dynamo would kind of fit nicely from that. And then finally, Amazon Q is an AI coding assistant, agentic tool that can, work with your developers kind of as like that, almost like an AI agent as a pair programmer to help them ideate through things and develop code and do coding faster, which can kind of, help you in that innovation side of things.
Okay.
Any questions on these before we?
Yes, definitely, Jeff. I mean, as you already know, we are heavily using Java, and we want to continue on that, right? And right now, you accurately articulated that yes, we want to go for API first approach. However, right now also we are leveraging API, but we are hosting it on EC2, right?
Mhm.
And we right now what I can see all these services, API gateway, Lambda. So you mentioned these are serverless. So can you just double click on it? And because just it's very new for us, it's very new space for us
Yeah.
as in serverless. And if you can also emphasize upon why you think, I mean, it would be important for us.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good question. And you're right. Serverless is a new concept for your organization. If you kind of think about it with what you're doing with your current world with EC2s, while they're virtual servers and we appreciate the business there, they do kind of operate on more of a provisioned, kind of capacity manner. So with the serverless things that we're talking about here, both Gateway, Lambda, and Dynamo, they operate and they charge you on what we call like a usage criteria versus a provisioned criteria. So if you think about like the lambdas, which would be kind of like the business code behind those APIs, they would be active and running only at the time that it's kind of processing that particular business transaction, and then it would, in essence, kind of shut down afterwards. Similarly, with Dynamo, it's only active when it's writing or reading or making updates. Otherwise, it's idle, and during those idle times, you're not getting charged. Now, additionally, AWS manages things for you, such as scaling and some resiliency and redundancy capabilities on those things. So you're gaining some capabilities that kind of align to what you were mentioning before. How you've had some, resilient challenges with some of your stuff right now, and you're gaining some cost efficiencies in terms of these only only when they're using, kind of like you only get paid, you only have to pay for electricity when you turn the switch on. It's a similar concept here.
Oh, okay. So, Jeff, am I understanding it right that these serverless services will not only help us to take care of take care of the scaling without we doing it manually every time, just like we do right now, but it may also help us in terms of cost optimization, which generally we observe that we over provision the resources in terms of current setup. Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, and I'll connect that for you a little bit when we, in the later section of this talk today. I did do some cost analysis for you specifically on that, so we can talk about that there.
Oh, sure.
All right. I just like to kind of make sure I kind of ground everybody on where we are before I kind of introduce the new architecture. So, your existing application, 3 tier, you got your web application as kind of the static files. You do have a load balancer, which is directing traffic across your distributed EC2 environments, all across 2 different availability zones there, and then of course your database. Now that's kind of, you understand that. I know that this is something you have. So I'll kind of talk you through some of the changes that we're proposing here. So first, we're going to be following what we call a strangler fig pattern here. And strangler fig pattern, for everyone's kind of understanding, it's when we're taking a capability out of like an existing system. Like in this case, we're going to be taking like the shopping basket capability out, because you said that was kind of the most important thing to be focusing on right now. And then we rebuild that capability, in a new technology stack that gives you the same business capability with enhancements in terms of new functionality that you're looking for. And we put that behind the load balancer here so that the it's unknown to the application up top, that and to the user, that they're consuming this new capability through a new pathway here. Now, there's a couple things that we did. First, we did create this new database store here in DynamoDB that's going to host your, the persistence layer for that basket. We did implement the business capability for handling the transactions against that basket here with that new Lambda capability. And we put that all behind the new API gateway, which I was mentioning before, to kind of route the traffic. And in the little demo that we built, we kind of introduced using Amazon Q to kind of help us with, giving it some prompts that could kind of aid us in how we develop, and also guide us in terms of how to best use the AWS services from a well architected a manner here. Make sense so far?
Yes, just one question I have over here, Jeff. So let's say, for example, I mean, this is great. I mean, what I can see, but let's say, because of some unknown issue, if you have to go back, to the existing, piece of the architecture, we will be able to go back, right? I mean, there will be no uh, impediment into that.
Yes. Yeah. So,
Great.
we can implement this in kind of like a blue-green type of manner or a green type of manner. We could implement this down here, and we could redirect traffic to it, on by region or by user or something like that. So you could kind of slowly introduce things here without actually having to shut down the old
Oh,
basket. So you could have some traffic to the old, some traffic to the new. And then
hmm,
also what we could do is, let's say something were catastrophic to happen down here. We could
mhm.
just, change the route and have everything go back to that. So it does give you that ability to, introduce the new, not completely remove the old, and kind of give you that ability to direct traffic to the new or direct traffic back to the old if you were to have to do something like that.
Great, great. That's
The
great.
one other thing I'm going to mention here is, I know that you guys got a lot of investment in your people skills, particularly around, some of the technology stacks that you use. Um, you know, Dynamo, I can appreciate that NoSQL would be a little bit new for this organization. And there's certain things we can work on together to kind of help ease that transition. I do want to mention, Lambda does support as first class Java. So all of the Java, skills that your team has developed will still be, very used as we're building that out here. So there's one part of it that's going to be new from a technology standpoint, and one part that we're reusing skills from your team.
Yeah, because Jeff, as you observe, so we have mix of crowd in our team. So a couple of
Mhm.
folks are newbie, and couple of folks are have been working on the existing architectures, and they're very good because they have worked in the existing architecture, and along with the AWS services that we consume, they work for a considerable time. So I'm just
Sure.
worried that probably how actually this learning curve would be for our organization, right? I mean, it shouldn't be an impediment in according to go ahead and adopt and explore all these things.
Right. Right. And obviously, you can appreciate this would be a new pattern for your organization. And, so you might, be honest, you might see a little bit of, velocity slow down and maybe the first couple sprints in the program increment as they adjust to this. Though I think
Yeah.
what you'll see is you'll that investment will recoup itself later as they get, more used to this pattern, and then they will be developing faster because this architecture allows them to implement changes independently of each other versus before everything was kind of packaged in that monolith and deployed together.
Okay. Okay. So uh, the another serverless service which you mentioned, which is Amazon Q. So will that be also helpful for my team to probably leverage that and boost their productivity?
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. So one, Q is trained, it's based upon, industry language models. And then it's also
Oh,
trained with knowledge from AWS best practices and AWS documentation. So kind of think of it as like this agent that can help, right there in the development tool with your developers, kind of answering questions on how to use services, looking stuff up for them, giving them guidance on how to use a service where they don't have to go search through documentation. And then with additional prompting, they can even, have it, design and develop some of the code to kind of assist them in how to use some of those services. So it can in essence accelerate their adoption of new technology and reduce some of the risk because they can be doing this with the guidance of a tool that's helping them adhere to AWS's well architected principles.
got it. Got it. Great.
One of the things that I always kind of think it's important to do is make sure everyone understands that as we're designing this architecture, that it isn't simply about introducing new technology. It's also about how is this technology really kind of enabling the outcomes that you're looking for. So first, in terms of the scalability, um, I mentioned those serverless capabilities here. So like
Mhm.
Gateway, Lambda, Dynamo. Since they're serverless and AWS is kind of managing this for you, we're able to scale up and scale down depending upon the workload that's coming our way. So it gives you that without you having to manage it. From the isolation perspective, load balancer and Lambda, you can have separate deployments, separate configuration routes that can allow you to have different applications because we could kind of take this pattern here and start to build out, more and more and more, and we'll have that isolation across the application boundaries. Um, you know,
Mm.
and that kind of leads into some of the, gaining the agility here in terms of, releasing things quicker, with Gateway, the load balancer, Dynamo, and even Lambda, I'd say. I don't know why I went backwards. Having smaller units of code, smaller units of databases allows us to have development teams that can work in shorter increments, sometimes even have like teams or micro teams working on things and deploying things quicker, which really aids in that speed of development. Innovation here, I mentioned that, Amazon Q can really help you as you're thinking about building new things with people who are new to maybe building those new things. Q can help with that. You can also even interact with it to start to think about how you might envision net new capabilities for your application. And then the cost effectiveness here, with things like Dynamo, Lambda, those things run serverless. You're going to get kind of the best bang for the buck or value out of this architecture. And you can even start to kind of trace that back to what is it costing you kind of per transaction, back up to your business transaction that it's supporting, and start to see, oh, as my volume goes up, my costs go up, and I can relate those easily together to each other. And as you start to have things where, hey, we spent a lot of money this past month on Land and Dynamo. It's like, okay, but that was because we had a bunch of marketing that was creating sale opportunities. So it was driving up sales. So it's going to be very relatable to each other, which I know in today's world, it's kind of not as easy to understand kind of the correlation behind some of the business world, what's happening in terms of some of the marketing campaigns and how it's affecting the volume.
Great, great. That sounds interesting to me, Jeff. That this architecture will allow us, even there are certain spikes in the cost, so we
Mm.
would be able to go ahead and we would be able to track that down, linking to the business KPIs and why it has happened, why this cost has been surged up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds interesting.
So I'll go a little bit into the demonstration here to kind of show you how I was built, kind of look what's behind the scenes of it a little bit. I know you're familiar with the existing application on EC2 and MySQL. Now, kind of getting back to the first thing, I did here is you have this, basket here as a table in MySQL. So what I did is I extracted that out kind of from a schema and then converted to NoSQL and implemented that over here in DynamoDB, and you can see that. What I later then did is I took the shopping basket logic, kind of extracted it out of there, and with the help of Q and some prompting, I worked to build that as a Lambda function there. And this was really great because it allowed me to reuse the code, and it'll allow your team to reuse code and reuse the skills they have in in Java. And then kind of on that API side of things, this is where that triangular fig pattern really kind of comes into play and helps us out a lot. So for some of the existing transactions here, there's going to be paths in the API that will still route out to the old monolith application because we're still keeping that around for other things. However, what I did is I adjusted the route for this particular function of the basket that would go over to this new Lambda function that I created the previous step. So now I'm able to kind of have the old blend with the new and have that be transparent to the people, using the application themselves.
Yeah. So, Jeff, just one question. I see, in the demo, I can see, the AWS console snips.
Yeah,
However, right now, we are we do have IAC posture. IAC in the sense, infrastructure as a code, posture, and
yeah,
we are also moving towards that. And obviously, to tighten our security and take care of the infrastructure drifts and whatnot.
yeah.
So, as a part of our organization standard. I think probably we will not be able to give the console access to all of the developers in the team. So what can be done about that?
Yeah, so obviously for demonstration purposes here, I was doing things in the console. We'll work with your team, and they're already very comfortable with, the development tools that they use, such as VS Code and the code pipelines that you have there. What we'll be doing here is we'd be introducing into their world, would they be setting up like the gateway, deploying the Lambda and setting up DynamoDB, in Terraform or CloudFormation, and then kind of packaging that through, in the build process. So you're right, you wouldn't be giving them console access. However, through Terraform or CloudFormation, they could be building all of these infrastructure as code assets. So all this would be kind of managed as code in your typical GitHub and kind of code pipelines that you have.
Oh, great. So we despite going serverless, we would be able to maintain our IC posture, and we can
Yeah.
deploy everything programmatically, right?
Yes.
Great,
Absolutely.
great.
All right. Want to connect it back. You had some good questions before, so I'll give you the comparison on kind of what this costs in your current world with the whole monolith application that you had. If we were to do nothing, you're spending about $11,000 a month for everything. This this application that we just kind of demonstrated for the shopping basket using Gateway, Lambda, and Dynamo, that's going to cost about $730 a year to run. So what you can see is, not a lot of money to kind of get a lot of the volume through that particular asset. Now, by taking shopping basket out of your existing monolith, it's going to reduce the volume over there, and we can kind of, reduce the amount of EC2s that we had there, and maybe even lower the configuration settings on those EC2s. So it's going to bring that down from about 11,000 to about $7,100. So you still have some spend on that existing monolith, but it's going to go down basically because we're taking something out of it. So in essence, the new application, but blending both the old and the new, costs you about $7,800 a year, thus saving you about $3,000 a year just by moving shopping basket to this new architecture. And what I'm going to call out here is this is a per function modernization that we're doing. We're not doing big bang with the whole application. So taking this same model, as we think about maybe the user management, the product catalog, and other things out of the shopping application, you could be looking for every one of those applications, maybe costing around that $700-800 a year, and taking out about $3,000 out of these existing monoliths. So we start to kind of, you know, take things out of that monolith and kind of strangle fig things out of there. Every time we do it, we're saving money on that side, and then replacing it with a much lower spend on the serverless side. And I did kind of model this all out in the pricing calculator here, which I gave you a link to. So if you want to kind of look at the math behind all of this, you can look at that as well.
Okay, that's great. But Jeff, I do have one question over here. So let's say yes, it is right. Like we are spending almost like an 11 k like per month. But I mean, as we are hosting it on AC2, so we are pretty much aware that okay, this is the capacity that we are consuming in terms of like hosting our application in terms of static. But um, uh, as now, like we will be like probably adopting the serverless thing. So what all factors like can affect in terms of cost, in terms of like hiking it up, or even down? Can you just shed some light on
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, within Lambda, some of the things that you can configure, the memory size used by the particular Lambda function, so you can dial that up or down. And there's some tools we can use to help you kind of model what that is. And then you can set limits on how much you want it to scale up, which can kind of keep you within budgetary things, and you can set up Amazon budgets for that kind of stuff. It's also going to give you kind of that direct correlation to as your volume moves up, your cost will go up a little bit. So you'll be able to have that line of sight.
Oh, so despite being going to the serverless footprint, we are not going. We will not be like going haywire with the cost, right?
No,
As it will
no,
be auto scaling. Oh,
no, no. Yeah, we can
great,
control those kind of things.
nice.
I appreciate your time today. This was a lot of fun for me to build this and kind of work with your team and show it. I'd love to work with you to kind of assemble that pilot team and build out this new microservice. We'll work to launch it in parallel with I mentioned and gradually swing traffic over to the new service. As we build this out, we'll assess the architecture design, the process, and the people skills used in building it as we go through kind of our first program increment with it. Step back, look at it, adjust approach as necessary, and then really work towards decomposing the remaining business function in your monolith. Um, Sound like a good plan? I'd love to get started with you.
Yeah, definitely. Like we would love to get started. But with whom, like from the AWS side, probably we should collaborate with.
Yeah, so I'll be kind of your point of contact from the technical perspective, and then through some different mechanisms, working with your account team, your TAM. when we might bring in some other expertise and maybe some of the specific areas that we need to go deeper in, we'll work with you on how to kind of put the right team together to kind of help you along through this journey.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Awesome.
Jeff and Bhaskar. Interesting discussion. And yeah, this is how customer meetings are handled. And being Jeff, like being super calm, super composed, having all the ducks in the row kind of a thing. So yeah, it's really nice. And Bhaskar also asks questions which are very legitimate, like upskilling or about the downtime or scaling. So yeah, this is how customer conversations happen. Thanks for that.
Sure thing.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really enjoyed listening to both of you folks. Thank you so much. Very informative.
Exactly. And like Jeff mentioned at the last, like there are multiple people who get involved with customer. It is not just one single person who handles everything. So maybe there is SA who is taking care of technical thing, but there could be account managers, there could be TAM, there could be support people. So a lot of people help customer depending on the size, complexity, and other settings into the environment.
Certainly kind of
thanks,
in the role
everyone.
play scenario, like,
Yeah,
I
exactly.
played one person and Bhaskar played one person. In the real world, there'd be probably more than one person presenting the architecture and
Exactly.
obviously more than one person on the review side.
True.
Yeah.
And customer would also bring on multiple stakeholders depending on the type of discussion which is happening. Same goes with AWS also. So yeah, I agree on that. So as everyone, like last step for this particular session, I would request everyone that, hey, please go ahead and complete the knowledge check. We will be sharing the link soon. Please complete the hands-on workshop. We'll be sending the link also and additional material, and I'll ensure that those Udemy training previews are available to you. Be active and support your peers. Check LinkedIn group, check your Discord channel, and answer question if you can. There should be the good way of learning and growing together. And please share your learning widely. We could obviously see people are dropping off. We could see 700 people joining into the first batch. But yeah, that's what consistency is all about, right? Everyone is keen to get started, but continuing is the best complicated thing. So make sure you stick to it, and that's how the rewards are there. Nobody gets like you start running and you finish 1 mile and say I'm done. No, you have to keep on doing that 1 mile multiple times, then you reach to 10 mile mark. Otherwise you will never reach it. So keep your efforts continuously, and let us know how you liked, what we could improve, what other things you would like to discuss, and we can now frame other information or other batches based on the information we collect. So thank you, everyone.